One final look at the Buccaneers win over the Saints. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKlosky WTSB. We are your credential members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, you can find Evan on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. And you can find me here Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, we are talking trade deadline and handing out some midseason awards. Those are coming up in a little bit, but we're going to start this one, Evan, with your reaction to the Buccaneers win over the Saints. It was not a masterpiece by any means, but the Bucs did win their fourth straight game and their fifth out of their last 6 games against the Saints in the city of New Orleans. So, Evan, I'm curious to hear what some of your biggest takeaways from the game were when it seemed like the defense could do nothing wrong, the offense couldn't seem to do anything right, and the refs continue to suck.
I mean, the refs completely screwed that game up. I mean, Antoine Winfield Jr. should have two touchdowns on his ledger, and it seems frivolous right now, but like when talking about a Hall of Fame resume, it's not going to be there. So, talking
even
about
Pro Bowl or All Pro,
all those things.
Hall of Fame level.
So, from a very selfish side of things, I don't know what was going on there. And Todd Bowles, who is someone who almost always takes the high road and still did for the most part here, but in Todd Bowles speak when he was after the game asked about it and said he was frustrated, and then next day says absolutely no to have you gotten clarification? That's as pissed as you will see Todd Bowles at officials post game. He is livid, and he's doing it in a very mature way, which is respected. But he's not happy. And neither are fans. Anybody who's watching the game, it was BS. And fans are lucky that they can talk about this Saints game. And it was a 23-3 win. It was mostly a snoozer, right? They won with ease. If they would have lost this game, we have huge issues afoot. But we're allowed to at least brush it under the rug because of what the result was. And they still covered and did all these things. I saw some ridiculous stuff about Antoine Winfield Jr.'s props. Nobody bets the Winfield props at such a large amount that Vegas is calling in saying you got to make sure this guy doesn't score. So that let's not be egregious with all this stuff. But the referee gong show was terrible between that game and the Giants game. Nightmare. And the Giants, did get screwed on that side of it, and it did affect their game. Other than the referee stuff, which I hate to actually talk about, but in that game it was prevalent. Could not be more impressed with the defense. And complementary football is not just a game to game. It's not just something you need in a game, but it also is something you need in the season. So right now, even going back to Detroit, the defense is starting to find itself a little bit. And it's like, oh no, what's going on with this offense? They had less than 260 yards in Detroit. They had 212 in New Orleans. Oh, remember a month ago, it was the opposite story. Like the offense bailed out the defense. The defense looked like crap. So there are ebbs and flows. And I was explaining this to a coworker as well. There are some times in a season where, like, offensively and defensively, you're going to have like 3 games that are above your pay grade and 3 games that are so beneath you. And then somewhere in the middle is who you are. For the Buccaneers, luckily, the best game offensively bailed out one of the worst games defensively for this team. They got a win. New Orleans, one of the worst games offensively, was bailed out by one of the best games defensively. They got a win. So there really is this good, like, help me, like, if you don't got it, I got your back, and vice versa. Would we love to see the offense and defense connect one time to just see an absolute drubbing a la the Chargers game last year? Yeah. And I still think we have one of those games coming down the chute. But just a really nice tip of the cap to the Bucs defense. Todd Bowles, I think he's starting to really find a groove here with this unit. And yeah, on the flip side, offensively speaking, Baker's beaten up, and it looks like it. He was not the same player in Detroit. He got kind of hurt at the end of that game. He was, limping around and found a way onto the field in New Orleans. He injured his oblique in practice on Friday. There was a play in the first half where he scrambles to the left, has tons of running room. I don't know if he would have gotten the first down, but it's usually something he would have worked for on a 3rd and 7. And then he just like rushed through it to Otten. There was another one where he ate a sack, and it was like a 3rd and 12. He ate a sack, and I think it was toward the end of the first half. Maybe it was before his fumble, or maybe it was the fumble. I forget. And there's just all this green grass ahead of him, or turf, and he wasn't going to run into it. So, teams are certainly spying him a little bit more, but he definitely seemed like somebody who wasn't himself and hasn't been himself for the past couple of days. So games. So he's been a little bit beat up, and I think that's hurt the offense. I think execution-wise, things weren't in lockstep. On social media, I'm seeing tons of anti-Tristan Wirfs hate, and it was not a good game for Wirfs.
It wasn't.
Certainly I get that, but it was also a bad game for Barton. It was also Bredesen made a couple of mistakes. You have Feeney and Heck doing the best that they can, and then you also have Baker dropping like 12 yards back in the pocket. And he refuses to step up because of probably fear of the interior offensive line. And if you're tackles, I don't know what you're supposed to do, because you're supposed, Wirfs is trying to run his, Chase Young, out of the, around the pocket. But Baker is so far back that he can't run him out, and he just runs him into Baker. There was just a lot of the details have not been there. And that the Niners game, they were all there. And then the last 2 games, none of them have been there. So this bye comes at a really good time for the offense. Baker Mayfield, Josh Grizzard, just everybody to hey, let's get a little bit healthier. Let's regroup. And let's figure out what the hell we're doing. We don't have Mike anymore, and we got to reinvent ourselves a little bit. Now they got at least a week and a half to figure that out.
Yeah, and these guys need some rest. Tristan hasn't been 100% since he set foot on the field. And yeah, I think that was probably his worst game. It was a terrible game from the offensive line, but let Baker, recover a little bit. And then hopefully coming out of the bye, they at least get Godwin or Bucky back. Hopefully we're seeing Luke Gedeke sooner than later. You see Luke Haggard back. You start getting some of these pieces, and then the offense will start to get back on track, because they're too talented to play that poorly like the rest of the season. I think we're looking at 2 games where luckily they went 1-1, but the offense as a whole hasn't been themselves. So yeah, this bye, I said it a lot on my live reaction, this bye could not come at a better time for this football team. But a win's a win. I think if you and I were talking in July, the beginning of August, and we promised everybody that the Bucs would be 6-2 heading into the bye, every single Bucs fan would have taken it.
This was best case scenario. You kidding me?
Yeah.
My preseason prediction I think I had them. Did I have them 4-4 at the bye? I had them 4-4. Yeah. So this is if you told me 6-2, I would have been like, holy crap.
If I had told you 6-2, you would have called me a homer.
I would have. I would have. Absolutely, you're right. And I would have been wrong, dead wrong.
All right. Well, it is the conversation that you all have been waiting for. Should the Bucs make a move at the trade deadline? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. All right, Evan, I made a promise to the good people that are Locked On Bucs viewers and listeners that we were going to talk about this heading into the bye week. But there's been a lot of talk on social media, on different outlets about the Bucs needing to make a move before the trade deadline to, help them out. Some fans want to see offensive line help. Some want to see more speed at linebacker. Some want more help at edge rusher because they're disappointed in the performance of Hassan Reddick so far this season. Some just want to make a splash and make headlines. So we're going to start with this. Should the Bucs make a move before the trade deadline, and who are some of the players that you would target to come in and help this team?
So, yes, from a big picture standpoint, you're 6-2. Your division is weak. This team isn't even fully healthy yet. And, the Buccaneers defensively are number one in havoc rate right now. Mm-hmm. That accounts for pressures, tackles for loss, turnovers, like anything that grossly affects the games. There's a lot going right with this team, especially considering you're going to have, at least to our knowledge on the outside, I don't know what the knowledge is on the inside, the cavalry coming back to some extent, right? Hopefully Bucky's back. Gedicke's back. Godwin Jr.'s back. Mike Evans hopefully is back right before the playoffs or the playoffs. Kalijah Cansey hopefully can come back for the playoffs. That's somebody that we're keeping an eye on, considering his timetable and where that might line up in a little bit of a Vita Vea type of role from 2020. So there are a lot of names, but who are the guys that are not coming back, right? We know that Keith isn't coming back. We know that Cody Malk isn't coming back. The depth at linebacker is thin. The depth at the edge is thin. I know that fans want to see more in a stat line from Hassan Reddick, especially given what Anthony Nelson just did in New Orleans. I will say, I believe before last week, he was top 10 in pressure rate in the NFL. Yaya is also on that list too. And that matters on top of being stout in the run game. He's also a dropper. He's doing a lot of selfless things, which it kind of irks me a little bit that fans are very hard on him. I understand the expectations, and he wanted double-digit sacks, and, it would be nice to have more of those numbers. I do agree, he should be finishing a little bit more, but it's not like he's been some sort of like bust of a signing. I cannot rebuke that narrative more. Maybe he's not the Hassan Reddick that he was 3 years ago or whatever, or 2 years ago. I can meet you there, but that doesn't mean he's the guy that was on the Jets last year either. I think he plays a very good role for this defense. And from what we understand from at least what Bowles said, it seems like maybe it's a high ankle sprain type of deal. So maybe he's back in a week or two or something like that. So you have a bunch of bodies. You have a Super Bowl caliber type of team. I don't think this is anything where Jason Licht should or even will throw in like first, second, third round picks, any of that stuff. I think that if you can get a linebacker a coverage linebacker, let me say that, who can maybe work in and out with Servassier, or Servassier maybe is just more of your three. Servassier has good attributes. I love him against a run. He's actually a phenomenal blitzer, but against running backs in coverage, he is atrocious. And he just can't cover grass like that. I mean, you saw it. There was a 3rd and 8, 7, 9. I forget. It was Alvin Kamara got a dump down pass. Dennis over pursued it. First down. He does that 1 or 2 times a game. And in the playoffs, 1 or 2 times a game could be the difference between a 3 and out and a punt or a touchdown. Like, these are the things. So I think a coverage linebacker. I don't want to really throw out names because, you can think of the linebackers on the Dolphins and, there are some players on the Raiders. There are some teams that Tennessee. There are some teams there where maybe the bottom feeders of the league that might be trying to find assets. But otherwise, I'm just going to talk positionally with coverage linebacker. Like, I know people want an edge. I think that if you can find something super duper cheap, maybe, but otherwise you're kind of stuck. Like Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, if you're going to throw them out there, they have such a strong injury history as well. Like there's risk with that, as well as the asset you have to give up. Might as well just run it back with Reddick and Nelly and work your way down. So like you're really looking for someone who's a 3rd or 4th type of edge rusher as a oh crap option in case Yaya or Reddick or Nelly have serious injuries moving forward. Like that's what you would be building that for. Tough to find. And then certainly an interior offensive lineman. I think there's an argument to say that Barton maybe should be a guard in the future. I don't know if the Bucs are going to change that mid-season. If they were ever going to do it, it should be post-bye. But it seems like that is something that you got to kind of ride out for most of the year. But theoretically, you can acquire center, kick Barton out to guard, or keep Barton there and plug in where they threw, Jordan, Feeney, right guard, filling in for Cody Malk. If you can upgrade that position, assuming that Gedeke comes back, you might be able to find this offensive line in what we're used to seeing for the past handful of years with this team, and certainly last year where the running game was humming. So that's kind of it. And I probably wouldn't sacrifice a pick more than a 5th rounder unless it is someone like a linebacker who can be retained next year, because that is going to be a position of need. We don't know what's going on with Levante. Even if he does return, you need a backup option for him. And you also are still going to have to draft a linebacker. So there's a lot that kind of goes into that. And the fact that it is such a strong linebacker class coming out makes me believe that you would even want to draft 2 from this class if you can. So, yeah, that all is part of the pros and cons of what Jason Licht has to think of. But this team's also going to be a Super Bowl contender next year. And considering the way that this team drafts, you have to factor that into the equation of like, hey, you all like Jacob Parrish, don't you? Well, he cost a 3rd rounder. You all like Tez Johnson, don't you? He was a 7th rounder. There are some of these you got to wait. Like you're helping the now for the later. So, but yeah, I think at 6-2, if you can upgrade, you should upgrade.
Well, and as we're talking about this, the Patriots have traded 2 defensive players now. Both of them, You have Kyle Duggar and a 7th going to the Steelers for a 6th round pick. They traded a edge rusher for a 6th round pick. So, you can get guys that can come in and contribute without sacrificing that day 2 pick that obviously you don't want Jason to get rid of. But at the same time, it's like, the fortune favors the brave, right? So
I agree with that.
This
is a stacked NFC.
It is. I mean, we're seeing the shift, right? Where the AFC has been the dominant conference for the last couple of years. We're seeing the shift to the power going over to the NFC side. But do you think Jason Licht is willing to pull the trigger on something to help this team right now? He hasn't made a lot of trades over the years, especially I think he has one in-season trade since becoming GM of the Bucs. But I mean, what do you think? Are we talking 15, 20% chance he actually makes a move?
Yeah, I mean, it could even be lower than that. I'll say this, and this is like my overarching thought here. You're going to have to get through who are your main competitors in getting to the Super Bowl? The Eagles, the Lions, the Rams. Is there one more I'm forgetting here?
Packers,
sorry. And the Packers. LaFleur, McVay, Sirianni, their offense really, they're more of the defense, is Fangio. And then the Lions operation, which is just, grit and stones. But you got to ask yourself, is there some sort of piece that helps us in all 4 of those matchups, right? And you think of like Saquon and Kyron and Gibbs. We just saw what Gibbs did.
Jacobs,
thank you. Jacobs at least isn't more the pass catching you feared as much, but you got to ask yourself, it's like, okay, like if we go into the playoffs, more likely than not, we are going to run into one of those 4 teams where they're going to have a threat out of the backfield catching balls. And we are susceptible to that. So if you're going to win a championship, to me, you got to lock that down. You got to figure that out because you're going to have to probably face 2 of those types of teams where they're going to exploit you there. So that's like, it's not even about like getting to the end of the regular season, right? It's like, how do we beat these 4 teams? And is there some element that we're fearful that if we go up against 2 of 4, 3 of 4, that we're screwed in that area? And that's what he has to weigh is like, how can I upgrade our matchup against these 4 teams? Because those are the 4 teams with the Bucs, those 5. And, then you have kind of like underneath that, like the Niners who are so beaten up. I don't know if they can kind of get into that tier. And then I don't know who that last team is going to be. Right? I mean,
it's kind of up in the air. It could be the Seahawks. You could have a rematch.
The Seahawks are a very good team too. I'd throw them into that lumping, and they just eviscerated your defense. I think the Seahawks is a good addition. So it's really those 5 teams. I think you kind of know what the playoff picture is. So you can map out in your head, what do we have to do to win the Super Bowl, and can we find a piece that's going to help us in the majority of those matchups?
Yeah, and if you get to the Super Bowl, you could run into James Cook. You could run into Isaiah Pacheco. Or
I think if you get to the Super Bowl, then
Taylor.
My key is really getting to the Super Bowl, and then we'll figure it out when we get there, right? The NFC, you know what your path is going to be. I can't construct all 7 of those 7, 8, 9 contenders right now in the AFC, whatever it might be. I think there's probably only 4 legitimate teams, I think, in the AFC or so that can make it to the Super Bowl. But we'll worry about the AFC when we get there. You got to get through the NFC, which I think this year, this year is going to be a gauntlet. If you can get through the NFC, you're going to be quite the team once you head to the Super Bowl, considering, the path over there, Chiefs, Bills. I think the Ravens still have a run in them now that Lamar's healthy. The Colts are really good this year. So you kind of have like 4 teams, and then, that's it. Like the first round of the playoffs in the AFC, I think, is going to be a nothing burger.
All right. Well, no crystal ball, but Evan is going to hand out some midseason awards. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex? Confidence, pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. That's exactly where Rugiet's Go Long comes in. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is where I always go to place all my parlays, my prop bets, my game bets, my futures bets for just about every sport, and it definitely adds a little bit of excitement to your NFL Sundays. The Bucs are entering the bye week at 6-2 and are now sitting at minus 550 to win the NFC South. They're also plus 120 to win 12 games, minus 1,200 to make the playoffs, but they're all the way down to plus 3,000 to win the Super Bowl behind the 49ers, Colts, Patriots, Chargers, Seahawks, and even the Ravens. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. And since there's no game to make predictions with, which, by the way, Evan, I got my bold prediction right. I
got 23 right for the Bucs.
you did do that. So, hey, we're each going to take a dub for that one. But I decided to have a little fun here and have Evan hand out some midseason superlatives, midseason awards, whatever you want to call them, for the Bucs. And Evan, we are going to start here. Who has been the biggest surprise?
I'm going to work quickly here because I know we're a little short on time. Tez Johnson, offensively speaking. Defensively speaking, Elijah Roberts, a pair of day 3 draft picks who are emerging into roles that I did not see coming in the first 8 weeks of the season. Tez has been a spark plug and really has helped out with a depleted unit. Elijah Roberts has stepped up in a massive way with Kalijah Kancey out for the regular season. So those are just 2 people that entering the season, when talking about surprises, like I didn't even they were on the 2 deep, right? But they were buried on it. They were making it because they were rookies, and we thought they had promise, and that we thought long way, down the road they might make an impact. But the fact that they're doing this it's so early in their rookie season, tip of the cap.
That is not the names that I thought you were going to go with. Granted, I figured you were only going to go with 1. I'm perfectly fine with 2, but yeah, not who I expected. I love that. Who has been the biggest disappointment?
Disappointment as a whole or just the injuries, but offensively, Graham Barton. This is a guy who I think last year I was touting as a Pro Bowl caliber center. And, I give him a lot of credit too, because he shifted over to left tackle to begin the season. Now he's back to center. He's a gamer. Don't get it twisted. But I do have higher expectations for Graham than what we've seen, especially the last couple of games. And then also we talked him up all training camp long, Servassier. I think that Servassier is playing a lot better in the back. The games 5 through 8 versus 1 through 4 have been significantly better, which gives me promise and optimism moving forward. But just from where we thought he was last year, especially in coverage, we thought that was his calling card. And it just, 1 to 2 times a game, it's a huge 20-yard pop or a third down conversion because he just overruns someone. It's a good player, just hasn't lived up to the expectations, certainly that I was touting preseason.
I'm kind of hoping it's the Zion McCollum model, right? Where you see the struggles, but you see the promise, and the more reps he gets, he's going to stop thinking as much, and he's just going to be playing. And I think that's when you're really going to see the best out of him.
And I think you're seeing some of that. It's more of just like the angles and the pursuit. It's he's still making those mistakes far too often, and teams are setting them up for that. So, having Servase run down a running back 10, 15 yards, he's just not great in those situations. So it's a bit of an issue moving forward.
All right. Who has been the best offensive player?
And Baker, kind of an obvious answer. So in the non-Baker division, Emeka Egbuka. Again, factoring in if you're injured and missed multiple games, I'm not throwing you into the hopper because other people have had to get out there. But, Emeka, I know he hasn't been great here the last couple of games. He's been fighting through injuries as well, especially also his role has kind of changed now that I think he's kind of the Mike Evans now. But overall, first 8 games, man, he's been awesome.
All right, and I'm interested to hear where you go with this one because 2 names come to my mind immediately, but I'm curious to hear who you have. Best defensive player.
I do have a tie. One is Jamel Dean. One's Jamel Dean, who's having an all-pro season. And then the other is Vita Vea.
Okay. Not the other one that I thought of, but
Jacob Parrish, was that your other one?
No, it's Tyke.
Oh, I love Tyke too. There are a lot of people, honestly, like I'm really impressed with a lot of people defensively. And I wanted to find like Tyke. He didn't really kind of like, he wasn't a surprise to me because I knew he was really good. And like Dean, I think, is all pro. And this defense just does not work the same way without Vita Vea. He does so much in there that I think it would be it would be unfair to not mention him because he is still a force and he still makes an impact. There was a play against New Orleans where I think the Bucs were able to get a sack, and it was one of those great pressures from Todd Bowles. It was the Jacob Parrish sack. And then you look down at the play, Parrish gets a sack, and Vita Vea is triple teamed. So it's like, I'm saying, like there are things where he attracts so much gravity, and he also is a game wrecker that he is a nightmare for offensive coordinators to plan against, and that also increases the ability of the defense to do what they want to do.
All right. Who's been your overachiever?
I don't really have a good one for this. The only one I'll say is don't expect Anthony Nelson to do that ever again. So I know everyone's falling in love with Anthony Nelson, and they've fallen out. I'm sure a lot of people are if you heard my rant earlier in the episode about Hassan Reddick, that's why he wasn't a disappointment to me. Maybe as someone who hasn't met full expectations, but I think if you're out there saying I'd rather see more Anthony Nelson and less Hassan Reddick, I think that be careful. I love Nelly, but that was the best of Nelly.
Yeah, well, and I also thought Jamel Dean could have been in this category as well because we just have never seen Jamel Dean do what he is doing.
As far as interceptions are concerned, yes. But Jamel Dean has always been a good player. It's just he's always gotten hurt.
He's always been good, yeah. He's great this season. I think that's kind of the difference, but maybe it is the health. Maybe it is the fact that he's
the reason out there. You got to remember why he got that contract in the first place is because his peripherals and his underlying numbers are all fantastic. He had Carlton Davis syndrome. It was just at some point, if you can't play, I can't trust you. I can't put you out there. And then also for Todd Bowles to have a cornerback who can't force turnovers, then that's not his philosophy. So that was also the biggest issue. But this year you got 3 interceptions. He forced a fumble in New Orleans. He had a sack against the Niners. To that extent, we have never seen this type of Jamel Dean.
Yeah. All right. And the last one, Evan, who is poised for a second half breakout?
Offensively, Bucky Irving. I think once you get Gedeke back and hopefully him being healthy, I think this rushing game will start looking like what we saw the first handful of games versus what we've seen more recently. And then defensively, Zion McCollum. I think as teams start realizing, and they already have, that Jamel Dean's a problem, you will start to see maybe them test Zion a little more. Zion's got great hands. He's coming off that surgery, but I think Zion hasn't had splash moments yet, and we're due for those.
All right. Well, Evan, no blitz this week, but what do we have going on over at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app?
Ultimate Florida Sports Show airs on 10 Tampa Bay Plus every Thursday. I believe David Shealy is going to step in for me this weekend, as I'm also going to enjoy some of this bye week. And then remember, you can find our 6 and 11 sportscast on 10 Tampa Bay Plus. The Lightning, they have a handful of games this week. They're also going to have a really tough road trip coming up next week as well, so we'll keep tabs of that. Tampa is going to get the College Football National Championship in 2029. Press conference happening on Wednesday today for that. So, just always check in with us, and you can always interact with me at eKlosky, on the X.
So excited you're going to get to see Illinois win the Natty right there in person. All right, that is going to do it for this episode. Please make sure you're checking out everything that Evan's doing over there at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eKlosky WTSP. Follow on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to be an insider, it's real simple. Like this episode on YouTube, leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.